So I'll start with our Znode experience. So our team is actively working on 8 Znode sites today. That ranges from implementations, upgrades, custom feature development. As it relates to Znode 10, we've been members of the Znode 10 Technical Advisory Board for I think a year and a half now. We've also been Znode 10 beta testers for most of this year. So we've gotten to, firsthand experience with it. We've gotten to use it, take a look at just how the new SDKs are working, the new CLIs that Yash and Frank have been talking about. Our firm is an official Znode partner. We're a partner to Znode customers. We have a few end user customers. We're also a partner to Znode partners. We work with a handful of partners and help them with their Znode solutions, help them with their end user solutions as well. And then we've been in existence for a little over 3 years now. I like to call us similar to cloud native. We're kind of Znode native. So our first kind of billable work and project was actually on a Znode site, and that's really grown and allowed us to grow our practice. We're now a team of 7 developers, all in the US right now. So that's our background. And then my goals for this session. So we're going to discuss the difference between custom UIs in Znode 9 versus Znode 10. So we saw some presentations already about the changes that are coming. We know that Znode 10 is going to be using React. So I'm going to go through what that means, how that compares to Znode 9. We're not going to get overly technical. It's going to be a little technical. I'm always a little technical. But I'm going to try to keep it not dive too deep, but happy to have deep dive discussions about any of this stuff anytime. I'm going to share thought-provoking tactics for UI development, and it could kind of extend beyond the Znode ecosystem too. So maybe there would be some takeaways that you could use elsewhere as well. And then I'm going to show you how to start reducing the cost of upgrading to Znode 10 today by using these tactics that we go through. So this is just a quick screenshot of the overall architecture. We kind of talked about or Yash and Frank and Rupesh talked about there's sort of that locked SaaS layer that's going to go through the automatic updates that we can no longer customize. Should bring a lot of stability to the system and really allow everybody to get the latest version of the software quickly. And then what we're going to really focus on is the area that you can customize and the area that you probably have been customizing quite a bit, and talk about what we can do about that, how that's going to look in the future, what you can do about your existing customizations, that kind of thing. So reviewing the technologies, Znode 9, and this has been mentioned before, but just really focusing on those web store technologies. I know we kind of talked about everything all at once, but really want to zoom in on these. So Znode 9 uses ASP.NET MVC, uses jQuery as a JavaScript framework. Then it uses Bootstrap for CSS and styling. Znode 10, however, uses React.js, Next.js, and Tailwind CSS. So different technology, some crossover in programming languages. There's still, there's CSS, there's JavaScript, but it looks a little bit differently. And then kind of drop in a technology too. ASP.NET MVC includes C# on the front end, which is no longer a thing in Znode 10. So what are the benefits of that? Why is Amla going through the effort to make that kind of change? If we look at StackOverflow.com's 2023 developer survey, and we look at the popularity of these different programming languages, you'll see C# way down here, around, I think it was thought it was 90,000 participants in this. So it's a really big, well-known survey in the developer community. 27% said that they knew C# or worked with C#. And then you have JavaScript up here, the most popular language. And you see HTML and CSS also still valid here. So they're really shifting the programming technologies that are being used to something that's way more popular, which should be good for everybody. It should be much easier to find talent that can actually work on these sites. And that should just reduce the cost of that labor, reduce the cost of your overall projects, maybe make them go a little bit quicker if finding that talent is the bottleneck. And then dev speed. So with React compared to MVC, quite a bit faster for development. So this is just, this isn't any formal survey. This is just some past projects we've done and our current quoting practices. But for a complex UI, we're probably quoting and delivering in a 40% lower amount of development time than if we had to use MVC, Razor Pages, all of that. That's due to a variety of reasons. A lot of times it's the developer experience. You can get feedback a lot quicker. You can make changes, see it instantly on the page with these modern toolings. So when we talk about having to rebuild certain things, keep that in mind because we should be able to get there a bit faster. So the challenge, and I think everybody has already alluded to this, heavy UI customizations that you've done in Znode 9 will not easily upgrade to Znode 10 and likely will need to be rebuilt in React. And I'm talking about very heavy customizations, not changing the CSS, not changing the color, changing the style, all that stuff should be a pretty easy lift. But if you're building different features, new features, if you're adding elements on the page in the CSHTML files and then creating new functionality surrounding that, that stuff just won't work in a React-based environment. You can do all of that stuff and more in a React-based environment, but it won't just migrate over. And I know not everybody's a developer here. I would say probably most people are not here. Just wanted to point out, here's a simple component in Znode 9 using ASP.NET, MVC, jQuery, and then one using React.js, just pointing out that they're different. It's not something that we can easily run a script and replace the programming language. It is fundamentally different. There's C# code mixed in here on the side. React has its own way of defining elements, so it just doesn't, there's not a very good automated way to translate that. You could use things like generative AI to help you along, but it's not just going to be a plug and play kind of thing, unfortunately. So how do we reduce this cost of upgrading? One way of doing that is to start building Znode 10 components today in Znode 9. And when I say Znode 10 components, I mean using the same technologies in a way that will ultimately be able to migrate over to Znode 10. And one way to do that, a way that I like to do that, a way that we're already doing that with several of our clients, is using a free open source tool called Storybook. Has anybody here heard of Storybook or use it? Nice. Yeah, got a few. Cool. So what Storybook is, it's essentially a completely different web application that lets you build components in a visual way, lets you look at them, kind of catalog them, play around with the settings and see visual updates in real time. A great way to, this really extends beyond Znode. It's a great way to organize your front-end development, kind of decoupling it from the actual platform that you're building it for. And I'll show you an example of what that looks like. So what I have on the screen here, this is the UI of Storybook.js. So it's not Znode 9, it's not Znode 10. It's its own web application. Again, free, open source. And you'll see on the left here, there's this navigation. And I have it broken up into, and you can do this however you want. This is how I typically do it and recommend to do it though. You'll have components, you'll have modules, and you'll have pages. And I'll go into what that means shortly here. But first, just components, the simplest of the three, kind of your basic building blocks for something like this. And what I chose to do is just a button. Every one of our websites uses it. Could be Znode, could be your corporate site. This is just a button that says My Button. So behind the scenes, this is a React component that was built. And then using code documentation and just using native React functionality, we're able to expose the different properties of that button. Almost similar to how you would see this presented in like a CMS type system. So I have let's see if this video works. Just gonna show the types of changes you can make. So this is a control panel. We're changing the size. You saw the button kind of change size there. I'll just kind of scroll back and forth here. There's even things like color pickers. There's more advanced things that you can expose here too, like a file uploader if it's relevant to that component. But it lets you visually, you program the component, but then you can visually play around with the settings and explore what that might look like in different contexts. And that lets you, like I said, decouple it from the Znode experience and focus on developing that button exactly the way that you and your company want your buttons to look. And it sounds dramatic for a button, but as we know, we want unified branding and styling across all our interfaces. So this is a way to get that. Another way to use this tool, this could be, Storybook can be deployed as its own website. And it could be public facing. Some very big companies do have it public facing where they just show off their components and they kind of open source them, let other people use it. You also have it private, just to your network or behind a password, really whatever you want to do with it. We've seen people use it as a way for development and marketing to collaborate. So development will build their components here, get it approved by the product team, the marketing team, before it ever gets integrated in an app like Znode, so that so that there's no wasted effort, so that they don't go implement something that ultimately gets rejected, way further down the development cycle. Yep, that's the same one. So that's an example of that lowest level, that component, that most basic example. So next, I'll go into what I've labeled as modules. And again, these are my labels for it. Some people build it into 5 tiers. I'll get more into that. But this is a simple product card. It's not from any real website, just sort of a simple representation of one. You'll notice product image, product SKU, and then a short description. And then you'll also notice the button that we had in that previous component example. So the idea is start with your smallest building blocks, kind of get them developed, get them approved, and then start building the more complex building blocks at your module layer. I'll run this. So you can see this exposes the properties where we can change the SKU, change the description, change whatever, so that we can see what it would look like in these different contexts. You could use that to see what it looks like with different languages. You could see, you could use it to check your edge cases, see what happens, if the button text is super long. Does the button, stretch the way you would expect? Does it, go to the next line like you wouldn't want? That kind of thing. So a nice way to, again, test these components in isolation, just like the button, but now you're testing this larger piece. And then go to the next level. So then we have what I've outlined as the pages. So this is an example of a product listing page. It has a bunch of product cards. We can see what it looks like in a grid. I've exposed properties for the count that's in that product list or the items per row. So if we change it, it changes in real time. Change the count, you see everything. And we've even exposed properties that are in those lower components. We can do that and it'll pass through all the way. So again, we're just building the blocks up slowly to get to that perfect component that we're all collaborating on, approving, and getting to a good place before we're implementing it anywhere. So Storybook as an open source platform can do a lot more than that too. So this other tab that I was on the canvas before, so I'm looking at docs now, and this can be developer documentation. So the descriptions that you're seeing here, the property names, this is effectively API documentation. If you've used Swagger, for example, where you can sort of have that live API documentation that you can try out, that's what this is meant to be. So you can go, you can really take this to a really far degree. You can also keep it nice and simple. What I'm showing here is, I would say, pretty simple, just short sentence for each thing. But then you can also even copy the code and then, use that functionality to paste it in your application or paste it elsewhere. So in review of that hierarchy, so we have that simple building block component, and these are just names that I'm using, but it's how you would want to logically structure it in some kind of hierarchy like this. Could be 3 layers, could be 4 layers, could be 5 layers. So examples of that simplest building block would be a button, text box, then that module layer combines multiple components, so product card like we saw, or maybe a cart row as an example. And then we could look at that page level. We could build entire pages like this, combine multiple modules, and that could be, the product listing page, it could be a checkout experience even. So whatever level you do that at, this is effectively the code for embedding it in Znode 9. So we're basically making a reference to a JavaScript file and putting a div in there, and then your React component is in a MVC environment. So this is an example from, I've changed some of the naming here, but it's from a real client where we're embedding a real checkout experience into their Znode 9 implementation. So the idea then, since we're decoupling from these platforms, we kind of have these components that are these, Lego pieces that we can snap into these different platforms, into these different websites. Storybook becomes the tool for that. You then have a component library, which you can use in multiple ways. You can use, really extensively internally if you want people other than developers to get involved in it too. And then you can take those pieces, embed them in Znode 9, or once it's ready, embed them in Znode 10. And you can do even more. So you could really, any custom web app, I think Sitefinity, and probably any other web-based platform. If unless there's some kind of restrictive technology there preventing it, but it's using, very standard web technologies that should work in any web-based platform. And then we'll talk about a quick case study. So, and I kind of alluded to this earlier. So, Wisconsin-based railing manufacturer. I don't know who that would be. So the project was replacing the Znode 9 checkout page. They wanted a very custom checkout page, and we know Znode 10 is coming, so we didn't want to build this whole, custom Znode 9 checkout page in MVC, only to have to redo that whole effort in a year when they're doing that Znode 10 upgrade. And then the impact is they can use, they don't have to stop building new features just because Znode 10 is coming out soon. We can, they can keep going with their business plans, with their improvements. And as a bonus, they're already making progress towards their planned Znode 10 upgrade next year, because they already had a moderately customized checkout screen at that point. So it was going to have to be rebuilt anyways. We're rebuilding it now. It'll be, 90% ready for Znode 10 at that point. Case study number 2, a Wisconsin-based washroom accessory manufacturer that rhymes with Radley. So we built a custom discount review approval application using Znode 9 APIs. And so this was a standalone application. So when I was showing you all the different places you could put these components, this is one of the custom web app scenarios. Once Znode 10 comes out, they'll be able to make a decision. They could keep it as a custom React.js web app in Azure, or they could easily embed it in their Znode 10 site. And, just really a discussion, but it will be a relatively easy thing to do compared to if they built this whole experience in Znode 9 and, then went to that Znode 10 upgrade, they would have to rebuild it in some way. And then lastly, the business impact. So just in summary, really, reduce short-term and long-term cost of custom development. So we can develop faster in these new technologies. And then we're also removing that long-term cost of having to redo it for Znode 10. Faster time to market for custom features. And then custom features are now flexible and not coupled to any one platform. They could use it in their corporate website, they could use it in a custom web app, they could use it anywhere they want. And that's everything. Thank you.